thanks for jumping on today. All right, so today we're doing a bit of a monthly workshop. And so what our whole goal is with these monthly workshops is to explain to you different things you can do in the marketplace with property investment. So obviously we're going to start from scratch today and move into more things as the months go on. Second to that though, we're also going to show you a bit of a real deal. So when I say a real deal is an example of what we have been able to do for a client and what's worked for them. So yeah, let's get started, guys. We've got most people are cracking on here now too, which is awesome. So I'm just going to share my screen to my PowerPoint presentation, of course. So be 2 seconds. Everybody can see that. So firstly, I'd like to thank everyone for coming along. Now, just so everyone knows, we're going to be doing these workshops every single month. So with the next month, we're going to have Saturday the 13th of April, same time, 1 o'clock. So if, for example, you do want to come along next time, put that in your calendar, 1 o'clock. If you do register for the workshop as well, we do email you out a copy of the video down the track too, which will be attached to our YouTube channel also. So guys, the whole idea of having a webinar style structure is so we can interact with each other. So for you guys that know or don't know how to use a webinar portal, is we have the chat boxes. So you'll see down here down the bottom, if you have a question, now I love questions, everybody. I love questions. So as I'm working through it, I want you to ask questions. It's very, very important. So down the bottom there, you've got questions and answers, and you've also got the chat. So if you accidentally put a question in the chat box, that's okay. We're going to see it. But ideally, put it in the Q&A. And so we've got probably 2 or 3 times I'm going to just go through a few questions with you. And if it does go a bit long, I'm going to have a break for 5 minutes as well, just depending on how it all travels for you guys. I haven't obviously timed it out. So yeah, everyone understands that. Now, if you don't understand, please let me know. Otherwise, yeah, that's the chat box down the bottom here and chat there, Q&A here. Put it in there, punch in any questions you've got, and away we go. Alrighty, guys. So some of you guys today obviously are not clients as well. So some of you might have just been referred to us from a mortgage broker, an accountant, or financial planner, and they suggested you to watch this today just to understand a bit more about what we do. Also, I know I've got a couple of existing clients in there. Hello to those guys. But also on top of that, you might have been a friend or family might have referred you onto us as well. So end of the day, why you're watching? End of the day, you want to go to, you want to get ahead financially through real estate. You might just want some sort of passive income stream. And of course, you were referred to us as well. So today, what I'm going to break down a bit for you guys is I just want to explain to you who I am. For those of you who don't know who I am, that's only going to be a couple of minutes. So I'm not going to drag that one out. Beginner to intermediate property portfolio, so you can see where you fit in the marketplace. So if you haven't got any property, obviously you're a beginner. If you already have a couple, you might just want to know where you fit compared to everybody else. If you want to become an advanced or professional investor as well, that's more of a what we call a big picture strategy where you get full income replacement. And I even show you how to potentially not pay any income tax as well. And I do break down a real example. And the example basically is how we've taken someone from having, when we first met them 6 years ago, they had a bit of a mortgage, and we've taken them now into a passive income scenario of around about $58,000 a year over the last 6 years. So that might work for some people, it might not. So it's just my whole concept today. I might as well just go through this disclaimer actually. The disclaimer is, obviously everything I'm chatting about today is general in nature, guys. So before you take any big steps in property investment or any financial decision, you need to get professional advice to make sure that's right for you. The purpose of today's workshop, and probably everything I do, is to share ideas and real strategies and expand your knowledge. And the whole idea of that is so I can create confidence in people taking control of their financial future. For me, that's a big one. So let's get started on this one, guys. All right. So I'm just going to quickly run down a little bit about myself. And a big thing I do is I use a whiteboard a lot. For those of you who do know me, I do like the whiteboard. So I'm going to change cameras back and forth from my whiteboard and back to my desk here. Okay, guys. So let's get started. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Wayne Jessup. I'm a property investor. buyer's agent, and I'm, of course, the founder of the Property Bloke. I've bought and sold over more than 50 properties myself and thousands for others over the last 24 years. And I've been involved with over $300 million of property transactions. So the reason why I explain that to you is that it just shows my experience in the marketplace. Now, of course, you've got to have qualifications. So it's very important, being a property planner and a buyer's agent, you really need to have a lot of different qualifications for it all to come together. So I'm a qualified property investment advisor through PIPA. I've done my diploma in financial planning, real estate, and also mortgage planning. So that's not mortgage broking, that's mortgage planning. That's planning out your mortgages. It does come as part of property planning. Obviously, I'm a New South Wales buyer's agent and auctioneer, and then I'm also licensed in New South Wales, Queensland, Victoria, Tasmania. I'm actually licensed in Western Australia as well, but I've got to put that in there. And I'm a JP as well, for anyone who needs stuff certified, I guess. You can never find a JP when you are a JP, just want to put that one out. I do talk about, through the process of today, the reason what I'm going to show you here is I do talk about data partners. Now, I just want to explain to you guys what data partners are. Data partners are people who feed us information, which helps us put together property portfolios. Now, that information could be on mortgage planning, the information could be on population growth. Sometimes, say for example, down the bottom there, you've got hotspotting. Hotspotting is one we use on a regular basis. We get reports from those guys every month, you know, top 5 hotspots, etc. And what we do is we go and visit those areas to ensure, are they right for our client? Not all the hotspots work for our client. It could be from price bracket, could be just different things that might not work for our client base. But our job is to go out and research so that when you come to us to help you find a property, we know where to look, especially whether you're after more of a cash flow property, or you might be after a commercial property, or you might be after a property that's going to get good growth. So we need all this data fed to us to be able to work out for each client where we think they should buy. So when I talk about data partners, guys, these are similar things we've got here as well. And what you might not have seen there, but just sometimes your local council website can give you a fair bit of information. So the first part here, now for some of the existing clients that are watching, you may have already seen me talk about this, of course, but this is about being a beginner to an intermediate investor. All right, guys, but the first thing I want to show you is when I draw this on the whiteboard, I'm going to be talking about 2 particular properties. One is more like a house and land, and one is more like a dual key, dual investment sort of property. So when I talk about this is, I want to just quickly show you a couple of quick photos of, just say in your vision, in your mind, you can see what I'm talking about. So the first one here, of course, is house. Just like a normal 4-bedroom house. You'll see here by this floor plan, it's 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, double garage. Pretty simple house. Whether it's established, whether it's new, whether it's 10 years old, 20 years old, doesn't matter, it's a house. Just want to explain to you, that's that product there, it's a house for you guys. Now, internally, when you, as an investor, as you buy property inside your portfolio, I do talk about there's a certain level of inclusions you want in the property. So if you're buying one established, you want to make sure it has some things like, if you can get it in the right pocket, is you really want to have, see here in the kitchen here, you've got stone bench tops, you've got LED lights. Like, they're the sort of things tenants are wanting, and this is no offense to tenants that might not be able to afford this style of property, but sometimes you can get sort of a professional tenant, and that can be a better quality tenant in some scenarios. No offense to people paying cheap rent. Of course, you've got aircon, blinds, fly screens. You want to have all that in there. Exclude the furniture, sorry guys, in these photos. The furniture, you don't have to have furniture. But you know, you want to have fans in bedrooms. Even vertical blinds are starting to be a thing of the past. We are seeing Holland blinds or roller blinds a bit more often now, which is a bit more user friendly. And this is what we call a dual key. A dual key is it's a dual income investment. So what we've got here is, this is an example of 2 properties under one roof. The best way to explain to you guys what this is everyone would remember house, and then you'd have someone with a granny flat out the back, whether they converted the garage or whatever, they had a granny flat out the back. Obviously, they were first invented to put your granny in there, but nowadays people rent them separate to the house itself. So with these dual key investments, and I also call them multi-tenanted investments, is they're a bit higher cash flow style product. So with something like this, the only way you can tell this one, for example, is a dual investment, is it has two mailboxes out the front, and the pillar or the column in the middle here is a bit thicker because it's got a firewall going down the middle. So when you look at the floor plan, on the right-hand side of the screen here, you've got 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and 1 smaller lounge dining area combined. On the left-hand side, you've got 3 bedrooms, ensuite, and of course, kitchen, lounge combined as well. They still come with separate courtyards, but they're what they call dual key investment. This is very similar to a duplex, except with the duplex, you can split across 2 separate titles and sell individually. These are under one roof. And of course, the 3 bedrooms, the main dwelling, and the 2 bedrooms class is what we call the secondary dwelling or the granny flat in some councils. And this is some couple of quick photos here too. So this is like the 2 bedroom side. You'll see that the 2 bedrooms are a little bit on the compact side with the kitchen, etc. But they rent fantastic. Again, you've got nice bathroom. And see here in this property, you've got stone on the bench top too, which is awesome. Which is awesome if you can get that. This is the 3 bedroom side, of course. You can see it's more family orientated with the breakfast bench, etc. Aircon in the main bedrooms. And you'll see there, if you can see this, depends on what device you're on the window there, it's got the roller blind, not the vertical blinds. And they're the 2 properties I'm going to be chatting to you about when I build out this first scenario for you guys. And basically it's like this. We use alternate investing where we have a cash flow property and a growth property or a house property working with each other. All right, so let's go through it on the whiteboard with you guys. Now, I'm just going to change my screen. Give me 2 seconds, guys. Just got to change my screen. 2 minutes. All righty, guys. So what this first part's about is just building out what we call a beginner to intermediate portfolio. So first thing you've got, most people that come to me have a house of their own, owner-occupied home. They'll normally have a loan on it as well. Now, the loan will vary, obviously, depending on where you're living, what state you're in, what your personal circumstances are. Now, if you don't have your own home, that's okay, because rent vesting is where you're renting and you're buying investment properties. That's becoming quite common. That's probably 10 to 15% of our client base now. So from my perspective, whether you have your own home or not, that's fine. But obviously, to get started, you need savings to get started if you are rent vesting as well. So most people come with a home, all right? Then what we do is we go out here, we buy a property. Now, the first property we normally put in place is what we call that dual key. So that's the multi-tenanted property. The benefit of that is with a dual key style property, what that does is normally, just say, for example, $100, you're $100 cash positive. So you're every week you're $100 in front approximately with this scenario. With the dual key property, the benefit of that is that you've got 2 tenants as well. So you very rarely would see yourself in a vacant position across the whole property. But once you've set this up, what we do then is, okay, let's go out there and put just a house in place after that. Now, the houses will normally, we try and situate them a little bit into more of a growth pocket. That's not even a real word. A growth pocket. But from a cash flow perspective, they could be in a negative position, okay? So that's giving you a negative $100. This property is giving you a positive $100. So between the two, they're looking after themselves. So a lot of people won't invest in property because they're scared it's going to cost them $1,000, $2,000 a month that they're out of their own pocket. But as you can see here, we're actually keeping the personal cash flow separate. Now, you can include personal cash flow. You can do that. And of course, your results are going to be quicker and better if you include your personal cash flow. But the basis of it all is rested upon not adding personal cash flow. So these two are what we call set and forget. And we sort of match them up and we tie them together just from a cash flow perspective. Now, what you can do on top of that is you can come down here and just do it again. All right. So you might get another dual key and you might get another house. All right. And with those properties, they're also looking after themselves as well. So doing it this way, there's no real limitation except for the bank saying, listen, we can't lend you any more money. That's probably your biggest limitation when building out a portfolio like that. They might say you don't have enough equity. They also might say you might not have enough income, because anyone out there in this current climate will know borrowing capacity at the moment is a little bit difficult and the banks are being very, very conservative. So, but that's okay. We just work within what you can do. So you've got dual key house, dual key house. Now you could keep doing this. Now I've got clients that do all different structures. This is what we call a generic. This is very, very generic. We have clients, like I've got clients that have 4 houses and then they add a dual key property, because under their financial structure, they can afford to do that, or they space those 4 house purchases over about 12 to 13 years, which is a fair bit of time. And as the rent goes up, covering the house, they go buy another one. So there's different strategies you can do there. Also small ones like, some people just do dual keys only as well, which is just more of a cash flow style design. Doesn't bother me which ones you do, as long as you're buying the right product in the right area, and that's going to achieve the outcomes you're trying to achieve. Now, what we do is, this is what we call your foundation of a property investment. Because this is really, beginner you would say would be a 1 property scenario, intermediate if you get 2 or more in my view. So, because this first property for most people is the biggest and most stressful decision you're ever going to make. Once you've got 1 property underway, you can see how it's working. Some clients say to me, I'm unlimited now, this is easy, but you've got to start with 1 and work your way through it. So you've got your foundation set. Now you might just do this might be all you do, and there's nothing wrong with that at all, because as these properties grow in value, so this house here might grow in value, where you're in a position with this equity that's obtained here, you can sell this property off and you might be able to pay your home loan off down to 0. We do that a lot with our clients. Once a property has enough equity in it, we pay off the home loan, because for a big question is for most clients is your home loan bothering you? Some people say, Wayne, I'm okay. I can carry my home loan. I'm happy to pay my home loan off. I've got 8 years left, 10 years left, whatever it is. I'm just going to keep pumping it. I'd rather put that money back into the portfolio. So in that scenario, instead of paying off the house, we might pay off the dual key property. And so one of these properties by themselves would normally give you between $40,000 to $50,000 per year. So if you can get this house to pay off one of your dual key properties, having that 40 to 50 grand a year coming in, it's awesome. That will supplement your superannuation in retirement, or just help you with cash flow prior to retirement. And there's no reason why you can't do it, this one as well. But as long as you're adding more property, so as you sell this to put that one in place, you want to make sure you're buying another property to replace this one, because you've got this cash flow coming in, or you've got less personal cash flow going out. So it's very important when you're putting your property portfolio together that at different times you get advice on, okay, let's regroup. This is where we're at. This is how much equity we've got with each property. You might have one property you don't like. You might have one property you hate. I get them occasionally. I just sell them. You're not married to your property. Get rid of it if it's not working for you. So from a beginner to intermediate, this is what you can do. And guys, this isn't difficult. Everything sort of pays for itself. But all you've got to keep in mind, 1 property, set and forget. 2 properties, set and forget. Normally when you might get to say 4 properties, you've got to really be realistic that you're probably going to hear from your property manager every now and again. 1 property is going to become vacant every now and again. So it's not as set and forget, because then you're looking after 4 properties. It's like having 4 staff members. Like, you're not going to be able to sit in your office and do nothing. You're going to have to interact with someone at some point. So the whole property scenario, the more property you get, the more interactive you'll be, but it's not a part-time job. You'd be lucky to do an hour a week. If you're doing more than an hour a week, like per property, for example, get rid of your property manager, get a new one. They're not doing the right job for you. So guys, that's what we call a beginner to intermediate style of property investment. And different ways you can use things from that perspective. But guys, I think we've got a couple of questions. So let me just change screens again. Jess, did you have a couple of questions there?
Yeah, we do. So do I need to buy 4 properties?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, no, you don't. So when I talk about foundation of properties, you don't need to buy 4 properties. That's just an example, very generic, like I mentioned. As I said, some people start with 2 and that's it, and they will go into the advanced side of things after that. It really comes down to what financial goals you've got. Like, it comes down to how big your mortgage is, how much income you've got. So you don't have to buy 4 properties. As I mentioned, that's more of a generic structure from that perspective. Just trying to think. Was there another?
Got another one there.
Yeah,
How long does this take to set up this foundation?
Okay, right. So that's actually a good question. So it can take, it's really up to you. So the best way to answer it is if the bank doesn't lend you all the money straight away, obviously you can't do it straight away. But we have clients that come to us and they might say, Wayne, I want to put 4 properties together in the next 12 months. And other clients that come to us and say, I want to do 1 property and then see how I go after that. So that comes down to investing in your comfort zones. So realistically, yes, you could go out tomorrow and buy 4 properties to make that work for yourself. But if you've never owned an investment property before, we normally suggest that maybe that might be a bit too quick. Get 1 first and then see how you go. But to answer your questions, you don't have to buy 4 properties, and it can take, I haven't answered the question, I guess. How long does it take? So clients of ours that put 4 properties in place, I would say it takes 4 to 5 years on average. We can do it in 2 years, but some clients can take 8 to 9 years to put that together. So from my perspective, it really comes down to you investing comfortably. And it's very important you don't invest outside your comfort zones. And it's really up to you how quick you want to do it. Your first property always takes the longest to put together because you're a bit more nervous. You just don't know what you're doing. But after that, you can really put them together a lot more quickly for yourself. All right. Is there any more questions in there at the moment?
There was another one. Just do you have to buy these 2 properties at the same time?
No. So some clients do that. They buy 2 at the same time. They will actually put dual key first and the house second, or 2 dual keys first. But they do buy them at the same time. You don't have to do it like that. But of course, again, it comes down to your age. So say, for example, I've got clients that come to me there in their early 50s. They want to be a little bit more aggressive. So for those guys, yeah, we get it together a bit quicker. But if you come to me and you're 25 or 30, no, you don't have to do it so fast. It just, obviously, no one wants to be locked into their job forever. So it comes down to, again, investing in your comfort zones, but you can buy 2 at once, but you don't have to answer your question. All right, guys. So I'm just going to share my screen again for the next part. All right, so becoming an advanced or professional investor. So realistically, the only way I can show you that is, again, with the whiteboard. So let's just go straight back to the whiteboard. Sorry for going back and forth to the whiteboard, guys, but it's just easier for me to explain it like that. All right, so here, lovely Jess has put together where you're up to today. So this is what I spoke about earlier. You've got your house of a loan, 4 investment properties. Now, as I answered the question before, you don't need 4, you might only have 2. It doesn't matter. It's about being comfortable to step into the next part of the portfolio. That's probably what my biggest scenario is for you, is when you go from having the foundation of 2 properties, 4 properties, whatever it is, to move into the next part, you've got to be comfortable with the process, guys. Otherwise, you will freak out. It's not going to work for you. So a lot of people come to me and say, Wayne, 45 years old, I don't want to wait to get my super up here at 67 years old. They want to have what they call a full income strategy. Sorry, wrong. Full income replacement strategy, right? So with that, what we want is you've got to be smart. So this is where I've come into place with my own portfolio. You want to be smart when setting it up, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to be paying a heap of tax by doing it the wrong way. So once you've got your foundation set, okay, whether it's whatever amount of properties it is, and you've got the comfort or your risk profile lifts. So when I first meet clients, they might be freaking out about 1 property, but after 5 years, they're like, Wayne, let's just go all out. Let's go in. So at the end of the day, you've got to be comfortable with it. And this is not for everybody, guys. But this, in a way, this is exactly what I do personally. So what we do is we set up a private investment company or trust. So normally when we get to this point, you normally wouldn't have a home loan or be very low on the home loan scale, or you have a huge borrowing capacity. So this is not something you can start with because the style of properties you put in here are potentially different to what you've got out here as well. Out here, this foundational portfolio, this gives you income outside of the company. You're able to pay down your home loan. You might get some tax benefits. There's all different things here that you'll get from this part of the portfolio. Where with this is, I wouldn't say it's more complicated. It's just a bit of a different structure. But you are lifting yourself as far as time management goes because you're going to have a private investment company or trust. And the reason why I say investment company or trust is you've really got to get your accountant's advice on what they prefer you to have, a company or a trust, because different companies have their preference. So inside its property investment company or trust, what we do is, right, we'll buy property. You might buy just some standard property. So you might buy, as I said, dual key, you might buy a house, right? But what you might do as well, now this will come down to where you're comfortable. Before you open this, you've got to have a strategy in mind. So we sit with our clients and go, okay, what's your strategy? What do we want out of this? What are we going to focus on? You don't want to try and do everything. You will get nowhere. You want to have a bit of a focus. So what you might do there is you might come out here, buy a duplex, build a duplex, sorry, and then you might sell one duplex, pay the loan off the other one, or you might sell the whole duplex off and just take the capital income from that. So that's what we call capital income. Capital income is basically, it's not passive, it's not coming in every month, it's coming in, I suppose, in a way, in chunks. So if this took 12 months, 14 months to do, you're not going to get your capital income or your profit until the end. But the other thing we do is you might go out and buy a commercial property. You might do what we call a HMO, which is the house of multiple occupants as well. So that's more along the rooming house style of things, boarding house style property. But these are what you call cash flow income properties. So depending on basically what property you're putting in the company will depend across whether you're going for capital income or whether you're going for cash flow income. And there's all different strategies you can do here too, guys. So once you get into your private investment company and trust, you always start small, but then you build up to bigger things. So you might start with a duplex structure, but then you might come over here and go, Wayne, I want to replace income through here, but I want to be a little bit more creative. And that's where, say, for example, you might go and do a small development of 5 townhouses or something along those lines. That's where you line up 5 townhouses, sell off 4 of the properties, because a normal townhouse project, you'd want to see a 20% margin, which is 1/5 of the development. So if you sell these 4 properties off, you will own this last property outright. Okay, so that will give you passive income coming in if you keep it going, and you've also got another unencumbered property you can use as equity. But of course, that would be inside your company or trust. So the whole idea of these private investment company and trusts is you want to accumulate money, all right? Inside the company or trust, you're going to pay 30% tax. Now, that's company tax. The benefit of that is all these money you've got left over after paying the company tax, you can distribute to yourself down here, and then we distribute it as dividends. Okay, so the benefit of distributing your income as a dividend, it's got a franking credit. So for those of you who don't know what a franking credit is, it's a bit like if you own some Commonwealth Bank shares, they pay you a dividend of some type, you've got a franking credit. Now that franking credit means you have a 30% tax credit on every dollar you pull out of that investment. So say, for example, I pull out $100,000, you've got $30,000 worth of tax credit already paid by your company. So the best way to explain this is, like, say, for example, myself at the moment, $91,000 I pull out as a dividend out of my investment company. And I pay 0 tax because that $91,000 on average is underneath the 30% average tax rate. So therefore, I can pull that money out tax-free because I've already paid company tax here. So what this means is you're paying 0 personal tax. Who wants to pay tax? I don't want to pay tax. So I'm paying 0 personal tax. Now, you can do that per person who's involved in the company as well. But so what it means is if you've got a really healthy private company or trust, you could pull out $200,000 out of this company or trust and not pay any personal tax at all. So that's about being tax efficient. So guys, as I said, remember this is general information. You need to speak to your own accountant about this because you want your accountant to be on board and to set it up the right way so you don't pay too much tax. Sometimes though, you have to have more than one company to make it work. Depends where you're investing because of land tax and different reasons. But a company only costs $2,000 to set up. And if it's a very clean company, it's not expensive to do tax returns, etc. So, but if you do set up a company, you want to make it worthwhile. All right, guys. So I think that's all I want to explain. But that's what we call a professional sort of investment structure. It's advanced because obviously you wouldn't do this if you're not up for it. And you can turn yourself into a fully fledged income replacement through that sort of structure. Sorry, I dropped my pen. It's just very important to know that everything comes with a certain amount of risk and you've got to be okay with that risk and be explained that risk by a professional before you enter into that sort of a transaction. All right, guys, but I think I'm going to have a few questions on this one. So bear with me. All right, done. So guys, got a couple of questions here. So Jess, what sort of questions do they have on this one?
So we had a few interesting questions on this one. So the first one was, do you personally use a company or a trust to set this up?
Like myself?
Yourself, yeah.
You know, I actually use a company. I'm a fan of companies. It's just, I'm not to say I'm not a fan of trust. It's just my accountant prefers companies. I prefer companies. That's how it's sort of like your accountant's a big player in that marketplace when it comes to they're the ones going to process your tax return. They're the ones that are going to give you the accounting advice on it to make it all work for yourself. Just reading here.
Do you had a question? Do you have an example of a floor plan of a HMO property?
What I'll do with that one, with the actual next strategy, I might show you that at the end because that's stuff to do with the actual real deal. We've used the HMO, but I'll show you that at the end. That one, that's okay. I've got another one here. What if you get limited borrowing capacities? So that's a good question. If you have limited borrowing capacity, what that means is you've maxed out with your bank. But when you go into a company structure, what we do is that's why it's very important with the foundation to have that foundation because we need equity, we need security. So what we do sometimes is we will take some of the loan and move it over to other parts of the properties. And what we do is we release a property from security to what we call an unencumbered state or owned outright state. That doesn't affect the deductibility of the loans, but what that does is it gives us one free whole investment property that we can go to a different bank. Now, when I talk about a different bank, in many cases we use private lending. So private lending is a way of sometimes getting yourself to the next level. And of course, when you're dealing with commercial style products, having an unencumbered investment property security is also good because that can also give you, just going through the commercial area, like there are some loans out there from a commercial loan, for example, that they just work off the lease. If you've got a really strong lease, you're putting in a bit of some sort of equity or whatever, and that lease payment is covering your costs. Sometimes you can get a loan approved under that, what's called a lease stock, where they just care about the lease is covering the commercial thing. But you cannot do that using owner-occupied securities. They won't let you do that using your home. So that's why it's important that when we build out your portfolio to have some of those foundation properties outside of your company because they can free up to create more opportunity for lending. All right, guys. All right. Too easy. So I'm just going to share my screen, guys, on that one there. But of course, if you've got more questions, throw them in. Always like to know what's going on. All right, so this is our real example. This is something that with this client, I think it's Matt and Ema is their clients on this one. Yeah, here we go. So with Matt and Ema, when they came to us, honestly, Matt was freaking out. He was a very conservative person, so we had to work around that. But I think the best way to explain to it, the reason why they were a little bit conservative is they bought a property 12 years before they met me, and it wasn't doing anything. It was very poor capital growth. The rent was okay, but it was very poor capital growth. So for 12 years, I think they'd risen about 100 grand. which for me, that's terrible. So, but with that, it wasn't costing them any money. And they had a combined household income of about 180K, which is about the average nowadays. So they weren't like millionaires, if that makes sense. And they were lucky enough though to have a mortgage of only about 150,000. So having a mortgage of 150,000 obviously isn't a huge mortgage, but it was a small mortgage, which was good. We were able to take these guys from having a mortgage and one investment property to now having a passive income of around about $58,000 per year in the last 6 years. And now they've got the option, do they work less or do they be more aggressive with their portfolio? Now with these guys, they've actually decided they want to be more aggressive with their portfolio because, and I'll show you why in a minute, but realistically, they could retire tomorrow on 58 grand a year, which isn't enough. They've got two kids and of course they've got one wedding, one's a girl, one's a boy to pay for as well. So that's not going to happen. Can't retire yet. So with the 58,000 a year though, it's in their portfolio, which can enable them to grow their portfolio faster, and they've paid their house out over the last 6 years too. So they're able a little bit easier going too from that perspective. So that's the sort of scenario, but let me break it down for you with how we've done it. This is the biggest thing. A lot of people they'll sell you and go, we can do this, we can do that, but they won't explain to you like a real scenario of what they've done for someone in the past. So for me, I like to explain exactly what you can do. So from my perspective, you can see that either A, fits your profile, or you might get ideas or just more confidence to keep pushing forward on your own portfolio. So bear with me, I'm just going to switch my camera again, guys. I hope that's not annoying people. But that's how we do it here. Bad luck. So we've got Emma and Matt up here. Now, Emma's 48 now, Matt's 52 now, but I met these guys back in 2018, all right? So they've been clients for a while. So they had their home, they had a 150K mortgage. That's a pretty small mortgage nowadays, I agree, but they still had a mortgage in place. But what they did have as well, they had one investment property in place. Now, with this one investment property, they bought it for 300,000. Remember, that's 18 years ago they bought this property, and it was worth $400,000, and that was after 12 years. That's the sad part. 12 years to gain $100,000 is a terrible return. But they bought that through a company who probably had not their best interest at heart, but they did soldier on with the property. So when I met them, this first property here that they had for 12 years, in a way, it wasn't costing them any money. So I'd say just keep that property. Don't sell it, because what I did was for them, I went and did some bit of research. So I looked at some data companies on the pocket they're in. This property was in Queensland, and I'm like looking at what suburb they're in. I'm going, listen, I feel like you're going to get some growth soon. So don't sell it, because they weren't limited with borrowing capacity. So I'm like, just leave it. It wasn't costing you any money. Don't sell it. Just keep it in place. So that's where I've actually had to review what they've got first before I made any decisions on what they can do to move forward. So what we did was we went out, we put a dual key property in place next. Now with this dual key property, they paid $600,000 for it. And back then, I think it was getting about $850 a week in rent, maybe a bit less, so $840 a week in rent. But what we're able to do there, that was covering itself, giving a little bit of cash positive income. And they bought that back in 2018, okay? And then we also added another property, of course, in 2020. As you'll see here, that's 2 years apart. You don't have to buy them at the same time, but this was a house. And they only paid about $500K for that. We're able to get a good property there for the $500K mark. And I think it was renting for about $550 a week, something along that. But that doesn't quite matter. So what we've got to do from there is, guys, I'm just going to get a blue texter. I think I've got a big blue one somewhere. There we go. It's just going to be easier for you guys to see doing here because it gets a bit messy. Sorry, guys. So with this property here, after a few years, because I do regular reviews. So when we're doing a bit of a review, we're like, hang on a second, let's check the price of that property. And this property had a bit of a growth, right? It had gone up to about 650K. And they had a little bit of a, not, I wouldn't say the word hatred towards this property because it didn't work for the first 12 years, but they just would be, their gut feelings like we want to get rid of it. And I'm like, you know what? With that 650, we can do more with that. So what we did was we sold this property off and we were able to get about 350K profit. But of course, you've got to pay taxes. But what we're able to do, we're able to cross off 150K over here, pay out their mortgage, which on 150 grand mortgage, the repayments aren't high, but that's non-tax deductible debt. So the quicker we get rid of that, the better. Then with the other 150, sorry, we had about 300 left after taxes. Should have said that, 300K left after taxes. The other 150, we paid off the dual key property. So they only owed about $450,000. Now at this point, we sold this property off. Then we just wanted to let it sit and see what happens because these guys were conservative, remember. When I first met Matt, like he was so conservative, his wife was frustrated that he wouldn't commit to more. And Matt, I understand why Matt didn't. That's because this property didn't really work. So I can understand Emma can see other properties working elsewhere, but Matt's like, well, that one didn't work. Why would I keep going buying more? It's only because they bought the wrong area. That's really what it comes down to. So that one, we let that one sit as well. And over the next couple of years, this one actually rose in value. What is this one? I've got my notes here, guys. Yeah, this one popped up at $890,000. Now, I'm not talking about properties doubling in value in here. I'm not sure if you noticed that. Sure, this one did, but that was over, like, I think it was 14, 15 years. But with this one here, this is only a few years, and we've only gone up $290,000 here. So we're not sort of saying you've got to wait till your property doubles or anything like that. Each opportunity can arise and you've got to recycle your properties around sometimes. So this one here, 890, 450, we actually had 440K cash left over after selling that property. And of course, I think we had about $380,000. 380K we had left after taxes. Because obviously we've got to pay a bit of tax on that, capital gains tax. So that brought this mortgage down on this last house of $120,000. Now, when we got to this point, this is all they had, which this property here was cash positive because we only had 120 grand mortgage on it. So it wasn't really but a big mortgage, but we wasn't really getting a ton of cash flow either. So what we did from that perspective is just reassess what we can do to move this cash into more cash flow product. So what we did is we went out, we hadn't sold this yet, we went out and we secured what we call a HMO property. So I'm going to show you that plan in a sec from that question we had earlier. But realistically, I'm just going to draw a line down here. We went out and bought another property, but this one took a bit to set up. So with this property over here, what we did was this HMO property, which is, for those of you who don't recall or may not have been in the first part of the session, HMO property is house of multiple occupants. So it's like a rooming house, boarding house, multi-tenanted property. But this property was a 6-bedroom, 6-bathroom. All right. So that's what a HMO property is, 6-bedroom, 6-bathroom, and the rooms are rented out individually. It's very common now. A lot of people haven't heard of it, but it's very common and it can work quite well. So what we did from that point is this property cost $780,000. But if you remember earlier, Matt's conservative. So what we decided to do midway through putting this together, we reassessed this property here. And this property here had risen in value from $500,000 to $800,000. So with that there, we were able to pull out of this property $680K because of we only owed $120,000 on it. Now, after that $680K, we actually had $600,000. We had $600K to play with. Now, for me, if I had $600K, I'd be going to buy 3 of these properties. But because Matt was a bit conservative, we wanted to do it slower. So what we did was we picked this property, 780 grand. Now, the rent yield on this property was $1,800 a week. So we're getting $300 per room per week. With that $1,800 a week, that's huge income. So it can make a big difference to what you're doing. And so what we did was we paid $600,000 deposit on it. So we only had a loan of $120,000. That was our in loan amount. Sorry, $180,000, got it wrong. So with that debt of $180,000, the reason why we did this is because this was a new idea for Matt and Emma. They were like, what if it doesn't work? And I said, well, let's just put all the money in from it, because they were concerned about it being vacant. They were concerned about having to pay the mortgage themselves. Even though they didn't have a home loan anymore, they didn't want to be paying a $780,000 home loan, because their biggest home mortgage they've ever had was about $400,000 over the years anyway. So I said, okay, let's do it a conservative way and just put $600 down. Therefore, your loan repayments are low if you have to pay for them yourself, but also put you into what we call a higher cash flow position. So when you're working out the numbers on something like this, you have your gross rent. Now, when I say gross rent, it's predicted gross rent of, what was we at? $7,800. So that's $1,800 a week over a whole month. But realistically, being a HMO, I only work out for my properties 90%. So I only work off 90% of that rental income. And at that, it works out to be, what do I call that one? Yep, $7,020 per month. Right? So that's what the gross rent we were receiving for the property. Now, but then you've got your expenses. So with Matt and Emma, they had a loan repayment on that 180 of $1,000. And they also had to include property expenses. Now, a HMO is more expensive to run. Obviously, you've got the high rent yield, but it's got more expenses to run the property, because you're getting charged a commission on the gross rent figure. So your commission's quite high. When you look at it's quite funny, when you look at your rental statement, you're like, oh my God, I'm paying this property manager like $300 or $400, $500 a month to look after this property, but it's worth it. Trust me. So you got $1,000. Now with expenses, now when it comes down to expenses, as I mentioned, it's a bit of a high expense property to have. It costs $1,170 worth of expenses to come out of this as well. But the end product, so what we call net rent. Net rent is everything left over. It was $4,850 a month. That's what they get after expenses, after their loan repayments. Obviously, they can just pump that straight off the loan if they wanted, but I'm trying to get them to use the offset account facility first. But what that is, when you break all that down and you get to your $4,850 a month, that works out to be $58,000 per year. So as you can see, in 6 years, we got them from Matt shitting his pants to $150,000 mortgage down to having $58,000 per annum, just by buying a few properties and strategically buying and selling and moving cash flow around. That's what I talk about. When you get into a situation like this, people say they freak out, but this was done so honestly, it was easy. There was no real hiccups through the whole process, and it was easy to put together. This is small to what you can do. You can do so much bigger with what you can do. Like I mentioned, if I had 600K here, I would go buy 3 of these, $200,000 per property. They might not give me $58,000 per annum, but they might give me $20,000. But then I've got it across 3 separate properties. So as inflation kicks in and rent goes up, my income is tripling. So not tripling. My income is growing up 3 times faster. So that's the way I look at strategy. But see, I'm a high risk, and not want to say high risk. I'm an aggressive investor compared to say these guys who were very, very conservative with what they wanted to do. All right. So I reckon we're going to have some questions on this one for sure.
We do. So obviously we spoke about the HMO and the example floor plan.
Oh, that's right. Yep. I'll get that one up for you guys. In the screen. The best way of doing this is sharing the screen. So there's 2 ones I've got sitting here. So basically what you've got is here all right, so from the front, so just so we know, from the front, a HMO looks the same as a house. It's you can't really tell it's a HMO or rooming house, whatever you want to call it. But see this one here, this is a 4-bedroom, 4-bathroom design. You've got bedroom 3 has its own ensuite, bedroom 1 and 2 have their own ensuite, and bedroom 4 has their own bathroom, but it's across the hallway, which is not a big issue. The laundries are purpose built with a couple of extra cupboards, and the pantries, you've got 4 separate pantries for each tenant. So that's what you call a 4-bedroom HMO. But then of course we've got the preference, which is my preference, which is a 6-bedroom HMO. This is just a preliminary plan, sorry guys. But same thing, you've got double garage, you have to have a garage, you've got to have a certain amount of storage, not storage, car parking and storage. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms. You've actually got a separate toilet as well, so it's 6.5 bathrooms, and you've got a lounge area and a kitchen area as well. So that's a 6-bedroom layout. That's the sort of property that Matt and Emma purchased to make it all come together for them. So that's what a HMO property looks like. Now, what you've got to be careful of is here, depending on the state, depending on the council, there's all different requirements for these. You just can't go out and build these anywhere you want. There's a certain amount of council to be able to do. So, but we always look for this sort of property all the time, because a certain amount of clients who've been with us for 10, 15 plus years, that they really want to put some of these high cash flow properties in place. And yeah, so that's a rough example of a 6-bedroom layout. I do have a 3D one here, I just noticed. Oh, that's a 4-bedroom one. So this is the 4-bedroom layout. But see here, in these ones, this was a little bit more in depth. They've all got their own bathrooms, yes, but they've got their own kitchenettes in this one too. So in some floor plans, you can actually do a kitchenette, because the whole idea of a HMO style property is to, you don't want the tenants to commune in the communal area as much, because they might not get along, or different personality, whatever it might be. And different states, so see here, this is a 4-bedroom, 4-bathroom, but these are built like studios. There's no common area. Can you see that? Because some states you don't have to have a common area, other states you do. So like New South Wales, I think the law was more than 5 bedrooms, you have to have a common area. So whereas other states like Western Australia and also Queensland, you have to have a common area. So we try and avoid common areas if we can, guys, to be honest. So yeah, to answer that one. Now, any other questions? There we go.
Yeah, we did. So was someone wanted to know, with Matt and Emma, did they purchase that in their personal names or in a company name?
The HMO. So no, the HMO we bought in a company name. The reason why I had a chat with their accountant, and the reason why we suggested to buy that in a company name was because they still wanted to continue working for a bit longer. Because like I mentioned to you, they were quite conservative. I said, let's put it in a company name so you can reinvest that money. You don't have to pull it out as an income if you don't want. And on top of that though, they were still earning their, I think it was maybe up to 200 grand by that point, bit over, but they wanted to continue working. They were happy working for a bit longer. They were in relatively relaxed jobs. They weren't in high stress jobs, had a fair amount of holidays up their sleeve, which they were planning to take, but they also wanted to be more aggressive with their portfolio. They've actually grown this confidence, and they wanted to get a few more things in place and get that 58,000 a year over the next, it might take another 5+ years, could take 10 years. But they want to get to a point of income replacement ASAP, which we should be able to do by the time, at least end of 60 anyway, to be able to put that together. It's not that hard from this point forward. Alrighty.
And just one other as well, when you spoke about expenses, as far as a HMO and taking that out of the rent, what's included in expenses?
So with expenses in the HMO, you actually have obviously property management fees, your normal council rates, you've got insurance of course, but you also pay for the power in most cases, and like internet, stuff like that. So you've got a few additional household utilities that you pay on top of what you normally would, because these are furnished properties. Normally a HMO, you furnish them. And you get a furniture package. There's companies out there that'll put a furniture package together for you. Sure, if you did it yourself, it might cost you 20 grand, might cost 30 grand for someone else to do it. But if you're not good at flat packing, it's not worth going through a divorce for a flat packing scenario. Whereas like anything local to where I am, I build myself. But it's a high cash flow product, so that's worth it in the long run. Alrighty guys, so I can't see any more questions here at the moment, but I'm just going to share my screen. We're almost done guys for today. Get rid of that. Sorry guys, I've just got to find the PowerPoint. I lost it. There we go. All right, so that was Matt and Emma. So guys, that's what you can do. That's a big picture scenario as well. It doesn't happen overnight. And I just want to say here, look, everyone's circumstances are different. So it's very important you tailor your own structure the way you need it, if that makes sense. So don't go in the deep end, don't copy someone else. You could end up last first, it's not worth it. But for those guys that are attending as well, like that will refer to us from accountant, mortgage broker, or one of your friends, etc. Even if an existing customer that's on here too wants to have a chat, we actually help everyone put it all together. So if you wanted us to put it together, we can. If you wanted to have a chat with one of us, Jesse's going to put in the chat. Jesse's going to put one out to everyone, a 15-minute chat link where you can put that in place and just book that. But appreciate the time today, guys. If you have any questions, feel free, you can reach out to us through obviously phone number, Facebook, Messenger, whatever. Reach out to us, see how you go. But I really appreciate your time. Whether you're watching this on live or whether you're watching this on a replay, good luck to everybody, and I wish you all for the future. Have a good one.